Hi guys, welcome back. In today's video we're going to be talking about social anxiety. It's really common in the world of anxiety, something that a lot of people experience, and I thought it'd be good to go through some tips, tricks, what causes it, how to deal with it, etc. So let's get on into it. Social anxiety is something that's really commonly talked about, and a lot of people struggle with it, especially in teenage years. That's when you'll find that it's most common for most people, let's say. And what it is basically a extreme fear of social situations. So like embarrassment, judgment, those kinds of fears. So you'll see that people with social anxiety tend to avoid social gatherings, places where it's busy. It can come across as like stage fright. That's basically what it encompasses, right? So it affects day-to-day life, as you might find talking on the phone's really hard. You might find it really difficult to just go into a shop to do like your weekly shopping of food. You can struggle in schools. As I said, it's something that's really common in teenagers actually. And it's one of those facts that a lot of people who suffer with social anxiety as a teenager, they actually get better as they get older. And my interpretation of that is because as we grow up, we start to care less what other people think. You know, when you're a child, everything's nice as such, right? You don't worry too much about how you look, how you talk, how you present yourself to the world. And as you grow older and you go into the teenage years, you become more self-conscious. Everybody does, it's just natural. You're more aware of how your body looks, you're more aware of how you're speaking, how you're communicating with others. Popularity is a big thing in school. That kind of anxiety stems from that fear of being judged by others, and in schools there is a lot of judgment. When I started suffering with social anxiety, or rather when I was diagnosed with social anxiety, was in sixth form. So it was school again, and it was strange for me because I'd been with the same people all throughout school. It wasn't like I went to a different place or anything, but it's something that I struggled with. And I think that there was an element of not fitting in. And I think a lot of people actually feel like that you don't fit in. Even though you might have your circle of friends and that you feel that you're different from the rest. And that's okay. As I said, the older you get, the less you care, generally speaking. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why social anxiety isn't taken that seriously often is because a lot of people think you will just grow out of it. It's just being an awkward teenager. But it is something that you have to work hard on to be able to overcome. So you may be suffering from social anxiety if you feel all the typical symptoms of anxiety, but in social situations specifically. So feeling nauseous, feeling dizzy, shaky, sweaty, all of those kinds of things. Those are the general symptoms of anxiety, but if you only feel those in social situations, there is a chance that you have social anxiety. And then there are a lot of mental symptoms that come along with it, such as worrying that everybody's looking at you, feeling like everybody's going to be thinking bad things about you, feeling that you're not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough, and just generally feeling inadequate when you're around other people. And you can see why social anxiety can be confused with shyness, because that's another thing. A lot of people with social anxiety tend to be more shy, and that's fine. But being shy doesn't automatically mean that you have social anxiety. So it's a tricky thing. Because just reading a list of symptoms, you can't really differentiate whether you have social anxiety or if you're just maybe a little bit self-conscious. So yeah, I think the best way really is to go see your doctor and get a formal diagnosis if that will put your mind at rest. I know that for me, actually having a diagnosis, initially it wasn't that helpful because I wasn't convinced. But actually, as time went on, it was easier for me to accept this is what's wrong with me, or this is why I'm struggling in certain situations. And understanding what you're dealing with actually helps you overcome it, because you can do more research into it. You can look into things. You can reach out to people who are having similar struggles. So if you're suffering with social anxiety and then somebody else mentions they struggle with social anxiety, you can speak to them and connect with them and share tips, share experiences. And that can in itself be really, really beneficial. So how do we overcome social anxiety? Well, for me, actually it was an exposure plan. Again, I mean, I talked about an exposure plan briefly in my previous video about agoraphobia. So it just helps you deal with those situations that you struggle being in, right? And you're basically just practicing being there. But with social anxiety, one of the huge things that can help actually is cognitive behavioural therapy, because then you're challenging your thoughts. And a lot of social anxiety is based on some kind of thought. So if we go back to it being a fear of judgment, a fear of embarrassment, a fear of looking dumb in front of others, or not being able to communicate clearly, those fears stem from a thought, not from something that's actually happening. So again, if we compare it to the agoraphobia, that's triggered by the physical situation in terms of being trapped, right? So yes, again, there's that thought that you're trapped, but it tends to be triggered by actually being trapped. Whereas social anxiety, it's a fear of being judged, but actually there's a good chance in that situation that you don't know that people are judging you, right? No, it's very rare that somebody will come up to you and start slating you to your face. So you don't actually know what other people are thinking. And being able to correct your thoughts to not just assume, that can really help. So cognitive behavioural therapy often goes through a load of thinking errors, and then you figure out which thinking errors you're dealing with, and then you kind of go from there. So it's something that can be really helpful. It doesn't work for everybody, but that's okay. It's something that's worth trying. There's a load of resources online that you can check out. And that's really mostly what you need to do with social anxiety, is really challenge those thoughts. If you enter into a situation and you're worried about looking dumb, well, why do you think you're going to look dumb? Do you not know what's going on? Do you not know what you need to talk about? Do you not know the people? What is it that's causing that fearful thought? So when you have that kind of understanding, then you can progress and counteract it. So let's say you are terrified of people judging you, right? That you're going to walk into a room, everybody's going to look at you, and everyone's going to think terrible things about you. So firstly, you acknowledge, well, I don't know what they're thinking. But what helped me a lot was thinking, well, so what if they're judging me? Does it matter? Is that actually going to create a problem for me? No, it's not comfortable. It's not nice to think that people are thinking bad of you. But actually, what harm is going to come from that? And a lot of social anxiety can actually become manageable if you accept yourself. So if you start to think, well, actually, I'm happy with how I look today. I'm happy with how I'm dressed. I know what I need to talk about. I know what I'm doing. If people are going to judge me, that's their problem. It's not going to make that much of a difference to me. So that would be my strongest piece of advice, is actually realising that it doesn't matter what other people think. For me, when I was at university and I would walk into a room and I'd suddenly feel very anxious, mostly because of feeling trapped. And I knew that people were looking at me because I would keep walking in and out. And a lot of support workers would try and tell me, nobody's going to be looking at you, nobody cares, everybody's focusing on their own thing. But I could see with my own eyes that everybody is looking at me. And in fact, that's how I made one of my friends, because they noticed I kept walking in and out and they were curious as to why. But then acknowledging that they're looking at me, I'm like, well, it is what it is, right? Once it gets too much, then I'll remove myself from the situation entirely for the day and I'll come back another time. And there's that strength in accepting yourself, accepting the situation, and being confident that actually it's okay. It doesn't matter what other people think. It really doesn't. So if you think you're suffering with social anxiety, make sure you go to your doctor, see if you can get a diagnosis and then a referral to some kind of counselling, cognitive behavioural therapy, seeing a psychologist, something like that. Because that's really helpful in finding pathways that work for you and also giving you a safe space to communicate your feelings and thoughts. But yeah, also just try out an exposure plan of creating situations and tackling them one by one until you get more comfortable with it. And then just keep at it. I think that's the thing. Make sure that you have some time to yourself where you can just unwind, whether it's staying in your room, reading a book, watching a film. Make sure you have that time to just unwind and then challenge yourself with something else the next day. I hope that you found this helpful. If you did, please drop a thumbs up. Feel free to leave any other advice in the comments. That would be great to create this kind of community. And don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you next time.